Welcome to today's webinar entitled Light and Legacy, Ben Linder's Work Continues. The webinar is part of an ongoing monthly series founded and organized by Nan McCurdy and myself. My name is Barbara Larkham, and I'm your moderator today. I'm the coordinator of the Casa Baltimore Limay Friendship Project, which has been working in Nicaragua for nearly 37 years. This webinar is hosted by Alliance for Global Justice and has many organizational co-sponsors who are listed on the webinar page of afgj.org. Special thanks to Madeline McClure from AFGJ, who is providing our technical services today. We look forward to hearing from several interesting speakers, followed by your participation during the question and answer period. The webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be sent out to all registrants within the next few days. You'll see that there's a chat function available at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to offer respectful comments in the chat throughout this event. The chat will be moderated by our technical team, and we will also be posting other information and links in the chat. There's also a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Please make sure that you put any questions intended for our speakers in the Q&A and not in the chat. We may not see your question if you put it in the chat instead. And now for a few announcements. To stay up to date with other events and issues in Nicaragua, you can sign up for the NicaNet email list, which is a Google Group moderated list for people who support Nicaragua's progress and sovereignty. The link to sign up will be entered in the chat. You can also sign up for Nica Notes, which includes a weekly article by an invited author, followed by news updates of the week at the Alliance for Global Justice website, afgj.org. Several ebooks about Nicaragua are also available at the same website, afgj.org, free in English and Spanish, downloadable in several formats. If you'd like to become more active in supporting Nicaragua's sovereignty and opposing U.S. interference there, you're invited to join our advocacy network, working to spread more accurate information about what's really happening in Nicaragua. Please put your name and email address in the Q&A if you're interested in this. This is the fifth webinar in our 2022 Nicaragua series. We've already set the dates for 2 more webinars in the first half of 2022, and we're working on the rest of the summer and fall. Please mark your calendars for June 26th and July 24th and plan to join us. We will post the dates and times in the chat. They are all on Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific time. If your organization would like to co-sponsor the series, please send us a note in the Q&A. Here's a little more information about the next webinar on June 26th. It is entitled Nicaragua's Mastery of International Law, Resisting Domination, Promoting Peaceful Progress. Sophia Clark, a Nicaraguan political researcher and analyst, will explain how Nicaragua uses its legal expertise to challenge the hegemonic designs of both a world superpower, the US, and a regional power, Colombia. And she'll describe Nicaragua's contributions in various fields of international law. Please do mark your calendar, and a Zoom link will be available shortly. And now we turn to today's webinar, which is 75 minutes in length. The format is as follows. After the news updates from Nan McCurdy, our featured speakers will have a total of about 40 minutes. If we're mindful, we should have plenty of time at the end for your questions and answers. I usually introduce Nan McCurdy with only 3 sentences. Today, I'm going to tell you a little more about Nan, which I think is especially important in the context of today's webinar topic. In 1984, Nan and her late husband, Phil, both U.S. citizens, led a group on a fact-finding trip to Nicaragua. They were horrified as they realized the savagery that the U.S. government was promoting in that country. They came back to the U.S., sold all their possessions, and used the proceeds to move to Nicaragua the next year and start a new project, a solidarity project in San Juan de Limay in the north, in the heart of violent conflict during the Contra War. They did what they could to accompany the Nicaraguan people while communicating with those of us in the US about how our tax money was being spent, not for freedom fighters, but for kidnapping and murder. The Solidarity Project in Limay has continued, but after 3 years, Nan and Phil moved to Managua to work and to start a family. Very suddenly, Phil died, leaving Nan with a toddler and a 1-year-old baby. She continued her work in Nicaragua, and after a time, she found a new Nicaraguan life partner, Miguel. Together, they raised the 2 children as Nicaraguans. Nan and Miguel do development work together as United Methodist missionaries for many years in Nicaragua and now more recently in the countryside of Mexico. Most of you know already that Nan is the editor of the online weekly Nica Notes. Now you know more about her. She has deep connections to Nicaragua, where she lived for over 30 years, and she continues to visit several months annually. Nan McCurdy, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Barbara. That was a nice surprise. Thanks, everyone, for being with us. And here are some of the many important news items since we last met. The World Bank congratulated Nicaragua for excellent project management at the 2022 spring meeting. World Bank Vice President Julio Jaramillo stated, "The World Bank would like to congratulate Nicaragua for the excellent management of its project portfolio. A recognition of this is that the country continues to achieve the highest disbursement rate from the World Bank in Central America." The president of the Central American Bank for Economic Integration, Dante Mossi, said that Nicaragua is an excellent executor of a varied portfolio of projects, such as roads, really historic roads that are connecting the Caribbean with the Pacific. Nicaragua is the country with the best roads and is expanding that network. He also said that Nicaragua has first world hospitals. In fact, he said, people come from other countries to see how these hospitals are being built and managed. The hospitals are efficiently run. If an X-ray machine is broken, it is quickly replaced or fixed, and the public continues to be served. In the first quarter of 2022, there is a 57% reduction in malaria over the same period last year. The family and community health model has been promoting a series of actions that were developed to reduce malaria. The Davila Bolaños Military School and Hospital in Managua, one of the largest hospitals in Nicaragua, is now equipped with 2 new state-of-the-art MRIs, the only hospital in Latin America with this installed capacity. These very expensive machines allow ultra-fast scans and speed up medical care with great diagnostic precision. During the national vaccination campaign this year, more than 2 million people were vaccinated, from 2-month-old infants to senior citizens. A wide variety of vaccines were administered between April 19th and May 8th, as well as 1.74 million doses of anti-parasite medicine and nearly 800,000 doses of vitamins for children. The representative of the Pan American Health Organization, Ana Solis Ortega Treasure, stated that for PAHO, it is always satisfying to see how the staff of the immunization program works tirelessly to ensure that the vaccines reach the very last corner of the country, We are very pleased to see that the vaccination goal has been met and exceeded. 89.7% of the population has received at least one COVID vaccine, and 69.7% are fully vaccinated. The Ministry of Health invested $3.1 million to deliver 50 fully equipped ambulances and 50 pickup trucks to healthcare centers and hospitals to strengthen immediate response to emergencies. Nicaragua signed 3 memorandums of understanding with Iran related to petroleum and agriculture. Iran will provide petroleum products to Nicaragua and may help finish building a refinery, and we certainly hope that comes about. Women's police stations were inaugurated in Santa Teresa, Department of Carazo, and in Huihuili, Nueva Segovia, bringing the number to 119. Women's police stations provide security and support to women in situations of violence and risk. Jessica Leyva, head of the Women's Institute, stressed that the commitment we maintain is that we deserve to live in an egalitarian society without stigmas, without stereotypes, without violence, and with a peaceful future with equal rights and opportunities. During the 169th anniversary of the founding of the Ulwa people of Karawala, Judy Abraham, president of the South Caribbean Regional Council, said, "Our indigenous communities are developing. They have grown with infrastructure for education, health, and homes, and our farmers and fisher people benefit from production packages. Our communities have electricity generated by solar panels, which is inexhaustible and does not pollute, thus contributing to sustainable development. The government has restored the rights of the native peoples." Exports increased 16% over the same period in 2021. Exports in this period were $1.4 billion. The products with greatest demand were gold, coffee, and beef. The American Cigar Association reported that Nicaragua premium cigar exports to the United States totaled 14.73 million cigars in January 2022, a 19% growth over the same period last year. Nicaragua is the largest exporter of premium cigars to the US, with 69% of the cigar market in January 2022. According to the latest survey released by M&R Consultants on May 10th, 83% of the population consider that the government carries out all its projects and programs for the common good of the entire population without distinction. 76% believe that President Ortega has led the country in the right direction. 81% state that the Sandinista government generates hope for them. 86% of the population is happy with the state of the roads, 85% with the electric energy service, 85% with public education services, and 84% with the interurban transportation. The yearly Nutritional Census was carried out in March to study nutrition of children from birth to 14 years of age, both in rural and urban areas. The census surveyed 1.5 million boys and girls and found that among children between 0 and 6 years of age, acute malnutrition has been reduced 2.3%, and chronic malnutrition fell by 8.6%. But a really big change happens among the children from 6 to 14 years of age. Acute malnutrition was reduced by 11%, and chronic malnutrition decreased by 16.5%. Based on this data, programs like Zero Hunger, family gardens, school lunches, and food production packages will be strengthened to eradicate malnutrition. Thanks so much. Back to you, Barbara.
Thank you, Nan. Sorry for the slight delay in getting back to my place. And now we turn to our featured speakers from the recent Light and Legacy delegation. 40 years ago, as a young juggler, unicyclist, and electrical engineer, Ben Linder came from the US to Nicaragua to install rural hydroelectric systems in villages in the war zones with no electricity. On April 28, 1987, Ben and two Nicaraguan colleagues, Sergio Hernandez and Pablo Rosales, were ambushed and murdered by the Contra. But their work did not die with them. It lived on. Our speakers will discuss the continuing legacy of Ben Linder and his comrades in community-led projects of El Cua, San Jose de Bocay, Nicaragua, as well as the nationwide progress that the delegation observed. Now let me introduce Becca Rank, a community development worker for over 20 years in Ciudad Sandino and a delegation coordinator through Casa Ben Linder, a solidarity project of the Jubilee House community. Becca will introduce the other three speakers in their turn. Becca, you have the floor.
Thank you, Barbara. It's so nice to be here with all of you today. I'm going to give you a brief introduction of our delegation. So the Light and Legacy Brigade was made up of 5 people originally from the US: David Brookbank, Bear Albrecht, Kathy Albrecht, Susan Workbest, and me, Becca Rank. We were later joined by more foreign and Nicaraguan compañeros for our trip to El Cua and San Jose de Bocay. The purpose of our Light and Legacy Brigade was to commemorate the 35th anniversary of the assassination of Ben Linder, Pablo Rosales, and Sergio Hernandez, and to see for ourselves how their legacy continues today in Nicaragua. First, let me tell you a little bit about these three. Ben Linder was originally from Portland, Oregon. He arrived in Nicaragua in 1983 at the age of 23 to contribute his grain of sand, as they say in Nicaragua, to the Sandinista Popular Revolution. He was a young engineer who dedicated his life to building hydroelectric systems to bring electricity to rural areas in Nicaragua's war zones. Ben was a juggler, unicyclist, and a clown, pedaling daily on his unicycle from his home where he lived with his family in Managua to his job at the Nicaraguan Energy Institute. Ben also worked with the circuses of Managua, rehearsing, teaching, and performing. With a team of mechanics and engineers, Ben worked in the war zones in El Cua, Jinotega, to install a hydroelectric plant and electrify the town. After the success of this project, they began to work on another system in San Jose de Bocay. On April 28, 1987, Ben Linder and others from the war refugee camp in Bocay had spent 6 days working on studies for the future power plant. The Contra, financed by the United States, ambushed them and assassinated Ben, Sergio, and Pablo. The only picture of Sergio and Pablo that we have was taken after their deaths. Sergio was 33 years old. With his wife Bertilda, he had 7 small children. They came from the El Cedro cooperative, where the Contras had attacked twice and burned all 60 houses and killed over 100 head of cattle. Pablo Rosales was a farmer with a wife and 4 children, who the year previous had been kidnapped by the Contra, but managed to escape. Both men took their families to San Jose de Bocay, where they thought they would be safer. Ben Linder was the first US citizen killed by the Contras during the war, and his death coincided with the investigation of the Iran-Contra case and became an important part of the debate about US support of the covert war in Nicaragua. Over 10 days, the Light and Legacy Brigade learned about Nicaragua's renewable energy policy, electrical grid extension project, climate change policies, and free universal health care. We visited a geothermal electric plant, a hospital, and community-led renewable energy projects in El Qua and Bocay. We commemorated the 35th anniversary with singing and puppet theater at Casa Ben Linder in Managua, and with a hike to the spot where Ben, Sergio, and Pablo were killed, and playing with children from the nearby Ben Linder Elementary School at the dam that feeds the hydroelectric plant, and with clowning and music with the Bocay community. Now our delegates will speak a bit more in depth about what we saw and experienced. We're going to start with Kathy Albrecht. Kathy is a longtime Solidarity Coordinator from New Mexico who will speak about Nicaragua's electrical grid extension project. Kathy, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, everybody. I need to go to my slides. Bear, can you help me get into them? Slide number 1.
Okay.
Ta-da!
There you go.
Try this. Modern peaceful Nicaragua was born of warfare and has paid dearly for its freedom and its peace. Between the more than 40-year dictator's dynasty of the Somoza family with its dungeons, one of them underneath this exact location years ago, and murderous National Guard, through the final popular uprising and triumph of the Sandinista Revolution in 1979, guerrilla warfare in the face of Somoza's furious aerial bombardment. Between all of this and Ronald Reagan's faked counter-revolution, the Contra War, a Washington-run, decade-long murder spree of mostly civilians by mercenaries, the death toll of Nicaragua's struggle for liberation was nearly 90,000 souls. So she really appreciates being productively at peace today. And the joyous spirit of that imbues most of Nicaragua with this concept, no time to waste. How do I advance my slides here? Bear, I can't get them to scroll forward. Hey, everybody, I just did. I did an arrow, it moved.
Okay.
I think, stay with me for a sec, okay? Yeah. An inspiration for all socialist struggle in the last many years, of course, was Che Guevara and is Che Guevara. I love his quote, "At the risk of sounding ridiculous, let me say that the true revolutionary is guided by great feelings of love." And now where's the next arrow, honey? Right here? Yeah. And so here you have the ruins of the Condemned Cathedral in Managua, which the dictator Somoza refused to repair, even though folks sent lots of money after the earthquake in 1972. And you have the government banner and perhaps the church banner across the front of the cathedral, todo con amor, todo con amor. Love for all and all done with love. When the Sandinista government re-entered the presidency through re-election in 2006 and 2007, Danielle says to the spirit of Sandino, who began the resistance against US military occupation early in the 20th century, estamos cumpliendo, we are going to complete this revolution. And that is what we observed on our brigade. This is son our brigadistas, and we are visiting the water project that brought water now to the neighborhood where Becca lives. And these are her neighbors seated, who are the officers of a long-awaited water project, explaining how the community, the cooperative community, even when the government hasn't gotten around to performing their apoyo in the area, the government community of a local village can bring water to surrounding villages and organize itself. One morning, we spent the morning with the Minister of Energy and Mining, Salvador Monsal, and he very generously explained to us lots about the electricity matrix of Nicaragua and how it is changing and developing. And you see here, although this figure is 2 years old, you see that between eolica, which means wind energy, and solar, just above, a sliver above hydro, these are more than half of Nicaragua's energy generation in total. And fossil fuel generation generated within Nicaragua is just 23% in 2020. And this endeavor to employ renewables continues today. Analyst William Grigsby recently noted 2021 was the year that Nicaragua began its final offensive to achieve full independence using the logic of building a country for everyone. And later, a month later, Foreign Minister Dennis Moncada followed, hailing the coming new year, this year, by reminding us all of the meaning of internationalism. We emphasized the need of respect for sovereignty, non-interference in internal affairs, the dignity and territorial integrity of states, the right of states to development and to have social security systems and resolve disputes by peaceful means. We reject the threat or use of force as a means of conflict resolution. We reject unilateral coercive measures contrary to international law. We urge the international community to foster a new kind of international relations based upon equality, justice, and mutually beneficial cooperation. Today, I get to address but one facet of the jewel of Nicaraguan revolutionary development, aimed at the good of both people and nature together, and it is her electrical power generation, the newly attained goal of rural electrification, and the ongoing development of her renewable, non-fossil fueled resources. While our brigade was in Managua, we dedicated murals at the Casa Ben Linder. And here in the foreground, we see the national hero among many, Brian Wilson, who tried to stop a shipment of arms to the Contras in the 1980s in California by blocking the tracks. And the train just went ahead and rolled over his legs. And he now is a Nicaraguan resident. And you see here him admiring the mural reflecting electricity coming to the campo. There's solar panels and light to read by, and campesinos rejoicing, and the good old on and off button, power button. The 5 types of renewable energy are reflected here in the next 3 photos. This is Momotombo, where Ben worked briefly, designing the plumbing that you see pretty gloriously displayed here at the foot of the cooking volcano. Here is the dam he built above the villages of Kwa and Bohai, and this was his first empresa, generating electricity to this day. And near there is where he was hunted down by the Contras with his compañeros. But here you see the effect of the solar. I always thought, well, how do you get the wind generators and, the big solar panels and all that goes with them way up into the selva, way up into the forest? And this poster shows us a really good way. And I got excited when you said you got a horse, Susan. So here is the result of, I see what the fellow here on the left is holding, I think of it as the fiber optics, bringing electricity and communication to many of the rural villages. The other side of the mural, this is the panel we didn't see previously. And let's see, going back to my text here, this key facet, electrical generation, of Nicaragua's progress against ponderous odds was obviously at the top of Ben Linder's objectives for contributing to this newly refounded nation over 35 years ago. The World Bank reported in October that Nicaragua ranks third in the world in renewable energy development. Nearly 75% of the electricity flowing out onto the national grid is a mix of in-country generated wind, geothermal, biomass, small hydro, and solar generation. Whereas when the Sandinista government reclaimed the presidency in the 2006 elections, fossil fuel electricity generation stood at 74%, nearly as high as renewables are today. And these are the children had been waiting much of the morning for us to finally make our way deep into the mountain ranges to the site of that first dam and to the site of the killing of the hydroelectric engineers. We finally made it to the site of the actual murders, and the workers of the surviving electric cooperative, hydroelectric cooperatives today in the region accompanied us and their families and children. It was a very big day of celebration in all of Nicaragua. We saw signs of honoring of Ben Linder and colleagues, Sergio and Pedro, everywhere in the country.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's time to wrap up if you can.
Oh, is that my warning sign? Great. Yep. All right. At long last, 99% of the country is powered by that grid. I've seen that change come incredibly suddenly to a rural community near where Barbara Larkham works, where the Casa Baltimore is in San Juan de Limay. El Palmar was without electricity for years. A cooperative from revolutionary times that lost its bottomland, had to sell it to keep their children in school during the years of neoliberal presidency, and then hung on and was without water, was without electricity, without roads for many years until really recently. And all of a sudden I visited just maybe 3 years ago and they had their electricity. And it was just a remarkable, huge change in their lifestyle. And Barbara and I and many have seen that happen in the rural areas. So I just want to mention that Nicaragua was voted this fall in Glasgow at COP26 to the vice presidency of the board of directors of the COP conferences on climate change globally, and that Nicaragua will be leading and representing all of Latin America and the Caribbean in that office. The vote for Nicaragua's global leadership was unanimous. I'll just flip through the rest of my pictures as I thank you all for listening. This is a generating station feeding a village. It's electricity, and there is that t-shirt and that worker and the Ben spirit above his, and the child loving the clown because Ben brought clowning to all the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I really appreciate that. Now we're going to continue speaking about healthcare. So we're just going to continue sharing screen now. There we are. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the healthcare aspect that we looked at with the delegation. First, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Idaho, and in the US, and I've been living in Nicaragua for more than 20 years. Together with my Irish husband, I have 2 daughters and a goddaughter, aged 14, 16, and 20. They're in high school and college in Nicaragua. I work with the Center for Development in Central America, a project of the US-based nonprofit, the Jubilee House Community, founded over 40 years ago in North Carolina to serve the poor, and working in sustainable community development in Nicaragua since 1994, including since 2018, our Solidarity Education Project at the Casa Ben Linder in Managua, which sponsored the Light and Legacy Brigade. So it was my pleasure to organize and accompany the delegation. When Ben Linder came to Nicaragua in 1983, the country was only a few years into the Sandinista popular revolution after overthrowing the Somoza dictatorship, but already many advances had been made in healthcare. Before the triumph of the Sandinista revolution in 1979, under the Somoza dictatorship, there were a total of 209 health units in the country, that is, hospitals, health centers, and health posts combined. The new Sandinista government made healthcare free, and even in the midst of an economic embargo and fighting the Contra War during the 1980s, they managed to increase health units 5-fold. By 1990, there were 1,056 health units. During the 1980s, Nicaragua created the now internationally used model for how to vaccinate in war zones when it eradicated polio and other childhood diseases with its successful vaccination campaign in the midst of the Contra War. Ben Linder helped with these vaccination campaigns. In the barrios of Managua, he dressed as a clown and rode his unicycle through the streets, leading a gaggle of children following him to the health center to be vaccinated. Ben had heard the words of Nicaragua's hero who fought against the US Marines in the 1920s, Augusto Sandino, who said, "If I don't live to see the Yankees defeated, send the ants to my tomb to tell me Nicaragua is free." After hearing those words, Ben changed the name of his clown to Hormiguito el Payaso, Little Ant the Clown. He wrote, "I am the little ant who comes to tell Sandino that Nicaragua is free, the little ant that goes to the barrios where the children didn't have any hope of health or education, and now even the clowns visit them." Just before he was assassinated, Ben played the part of Measles in El Qua, covering himself in red dots and running around the audience looking for children to infect, while a housewife dressed up as a vaccine successfully chased him away with a broom. Ben was assassinated in 1987, the war ended in 1990, and the country entered into a period of neoliberalism when Nicaraguans were denied their basic right to health care. From 1990 to 2007, neoliberal governments only managed to build 35 more health units, the majority of which were in rural areas and sat empty due to lack of personnel and materials. Even if patients could get in to be seen by a doctor, they were given prescriptions for medicines they couldn't afford. Imports of drugs were in the hands of foreign companies, and production of generic drugs was restricted. Patients unfortunate enough to need surgery had to bring their own alcohol, gauze, sutures, and sheets, and also family members who could donate the blood they would need. During these years, patients literally died on the street outside hospitals for lack of basic medical care. Our delegation visited the Nueva Vita clinic run by the organization I work with, the Jubilee House Community in Ciudad Sandino. It's a nonprofit clinic that was founded after Hurricane Mitch in 1999 to treat patients who did not have access to quality health care under the neoliberal system. The clinic began with general medicine, handing out medications to patients so they could get better. Gradually, its programs grew and changed to meet changing community needs. When public health care was made free again when the Sandinistas came back into power, the Nueva Vita clinic began to do more specialized care to complement public health care programs. Today, in addition to general medicine and pediatrics, the Nueva Vita clinic has radiology, dentistry, psychology, and vocational programs for at-risk youth. It also runs a program of lay health promoters that does patient home visits. When the Sandinistas came back into power in 2007, the government began revolutionizing public health care all over the country. The entire structure and culture of the healthcare system has changed, moving to a more holistic system, relying heavily on a small army of boots on the ground workers. Today, once again, the little ants have good news for Sandino. Our delegation had the opportunity to meet with Nicaragua's health minister, Martha Reyes, who gave us a tour of the Bellespai Hospital, which was built new and opened in 2018. The hospital is clean, modern, and provides an impressive array of services for thousands of Nicaraguans every day, at no cost at all to the patients. In fact, over the past 15 years, Nicaragua has built 24 brand new hospitals and remodeled 46 more. The Ministry of Health has built or remodeled 1,259 medical posts, 192 health centers, and 178 maternal weight homes. They've equipped 66 mobile clinics made from container trucks confiscated in drug busts. These mobile clinics provide nearly 2 million consults per year. In the midst of the pandemic, the Ministry of Health rolled out the My Hospital in My Community program, which takes specialists out of the hospitals and puts them in neighborhood fairs to screen for illnesses. Access to specialized care has drastically changed. Services such as chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and dialysis that were once only offered in the capital are now offered regionally. Prior to 2007, many surgeries were only performed by international brigades. Now local doctors do advanced surgeries year-round. A team at the Bellas Hospital recently became the first in Central America to perform in utero surgery. Investment leads to results. Increased Pap tests and equipping clinics with colposcopes and cryotherapy machines has led to a 25% decrease in cervical cancer mortality, previously one of the biggest killers of Nicaraguan women. An increase in maternal wait homes has led to a decrease in home births, followed by drastically lowered maternal and infant mortality. It is in this context of more than a decade of revolutionary changes to the healthcare system that Nicaragua faced the coronavirus. When COVID-19 was declared a pandemic, Nicaragua was already prepared by having a healthier, more resilient population with access to the best public health care in the region. Rather than shutting the country down, Nicaragua chose to teach its citizens how to live with COVID safely, washing hands, keeping distance, and wearing masks, all while getting on with their lives. Since most Nicaraguans live day to day, an economic shutdown would have been disastrous. As a result of this policy to safely stay open, Nicaragua was the only country in Central America to increase exports in 2020, and in 2021, its GDP grew by more than 10%. And due to this excellent COVID treatment protocols, which were adapted to the country's reality, Nicaragua has had fewer hospitalizations and deaths from COVID than any other country in the region. Rather than relying on costly tests, especially when testing materials have been in short supply, any patient presenting even one symptom is treated as a suspected case, and all their contacts are immediately given prophylactic treatment. The COVID vaccine rollout in Nicaragua began with its senior citizens in March 2021, but didn't kick off for the general population until September due to wealthier countries hoarding vaccines. Once it got going, however, a massive door-to-door campaign has managed to fully vaccinate more than 70% of the population over 2 years of age. Nicaragua is now beginning to vaccinate against COVID annually, similar to the flu shot. This efficient campaign is nothing new. Since 2007, Nicaragua's vaccination rate has risen to 98% overall. Public health workers participate in annual vaccination campaigns door to door around the country. Ben Linder would be proud of the vaccination campaign and the excellent public healthcare system Nicaragua has. Perhaps the little ants of the world have gone to tell Ben that Nicaragua is vaccinated and healthy and once again free. Thank you. Now we are going to hear from Bear Albrecht. Bear is going to speak to us about Nicaragua's geothermal plant. Bear is a communications technician and member of Veterans for Peace. And Bear, you have the floor.
You can probably tell by my shirt that I'm a kind of a firefighter, although I quit doing that when I turned 78. But anyway, I'll get my screen up here. Okay. Geothermal power in Nicaragua. It provides a significant portion of Nicaragua's energy out of a lot of different kinds. It's pretty good distribution of types of energy. There are 19 volcanoes in Nicaragua. Half of them have not erupted in over 10,000 years. 10 of them have actually been active more recently, and about 7 of them in my lifetime. That's a view of the Masaya volcano, where you can look right down on the pool of lava. It doesn't have any pressure on it usually, although it's been occasionally known to throw rocks and damage cars in the parking lot and hurt people, but it's a tourist destination. So we went and checked that out. It's pretty amazing to be able to look right down in there. Nicaragua has great geothermal potential. Theoretically, 1,700 megawatts. They're not going to use all that. They could probably power all of Central America with that, but if they did develop that much. And they could produce 5,800 megawatts from clean sources altogether, and no fossil fuels and stuff like that. This is one of the many scenes there. If I'd known we were going to do this webinar, I would have taken a lot more pictures, but that's the binary system here. We'll get that in a moment. Ben worked on the planning of this thing before he went up north to do the small hydro. He worked on the plans for Momotumbo before they built it. And this long shot here, you can see over at the right side there, you can get a little glimpse of the power plant. You see, compared to the size of the whole volcano, it looks tiny, but it's pretty big. There's a lot of stuff there. It works two different ways. The production wells, and there are a lot of wells, production wells, injection wells, and just leftover abandoned wells. The production wells bring up hot water brine and steam and separate it immediately into the two different systems. One of them uses steam directly, and then after the generation, there's a lot of cooling before they release it into the atmosphere. The other system uses the brine indirectly. Well, there's cooling towers for the steam plant there. And the binary cycle where you use the water comes into a heat exchanger, and then the fluid that the heat is exchanged to, I think it's pentene or something. There's a whole bunch of candidate fluids, but the one they particularly use. At first in 2003, it was 7 megawatts, and it's been upgraded since then. A pretty significant source of power. And well, it hasn't erupted for 7 years, but they have a plan for that if it happens. Nearby, Old Leon, they got nervous. Spanish village there, or city, I guess it was a city big enough. They got nervous about Momotumbo and moved away, and we toured that site there. There's a lot of stuff that's been dug out of the ash and dirt. Very interesting place. And Masaya volcano, a lot of volcanoes have more than one crater. Masaya has 5, and that's our favorite there. The Laguna de Apoyo is a nice little resort there. On our last day with the delegation, they include a play day, and we went and checked that out. And we liked it so much after the delegation, we went there for a couple more days. The food is really good too. And anyway, there's not a whole lot more here, except if I was to get into severe details about how this stuff works. But if you really want that, it's out there on the web. And I haven't used very many minutes. I could give some to Kathy if she wants to do some more. Well, okay.
Thank you so much, Bear.
That's about it. Okay.
Bear, you reminded me, and I did just want to add. Can you hear me, Becca?
Yes.
Yeah, that Nicaragua plans to be entirely off of fossil fuels by 2035. And seeing the way Nicaragua operates, I believe them.
Excellent.
Yay.
Thank you, Kathy. Susan is now up. So Susan Workbest is a retired teacher who's lived for 17 years in Ciudad Darío in Nicaragua. And Susan will speak about the community-led electrical and rural development projects in the El Bocay region. Susan, you have the floor.
Unmute. Okay. Hello. For several years, I had wanted to visit El and Bocay, but I always got frustrated until this time I was really happy to go. And and we gathered in several places to commemorate the 3 men that died in that Contra attack. When we were going up to Matagalpa, we first visited Dorothy Granada, a famous nurse that started a women's clinic in Mulukuku. There she is. And then we walked up to the cemetery there near her house there in Matagalpa. And we sang a song that we found out about. If my voice holds out, I'll sing it at the end. And then the same day we went all the way up to Bokai. It's so beautiful, that excellent roads. And it was such beautiful scenery, rolling hills and tall trees, which we don't have many of around here in Darío. So I always appreciate that, being from Northern California. Then but while we're up there in Bokai, Jose Luis Olivas from Asociación Pro Desarrollo Eléctrico Bokai, and Jorge Ayala, who's the guy in the blue shirt there with the orange cap, I believe. He's been a Spanish engineer that's been in Nicaragua since 1998, helping with this same cooperative. And this dam is on the Los Angeles River. And that's where Ben Linder was and Pablo and Sergio, when they were attacked by the Contra. They were measuring the river flow, and they shot Ben in the head point blank, and they shot Sergio and then bayoneted Pablo through the heart. And I've known all this. It's really hard for me to talk about this without crying. I've known all this since 1987, when I was in Nicaragua with Maestros por la Paz. But being there in that place just made me cry with rage. It was terrible. Just thinking about how President Reagan, there was so much senseless violence happening with his supposed freedom fighters, who were actually, going around torturing and killing people, and saying that they were the good guys and the Sandinistas were the bad guys, when they had been able to get rid of the U.S. supported Somoza government in 1979, and their whole point was to raise the poor people of Nicaragua out of poverty, landlessness, and illiteracy. And so Reagan wanted them eliminated by the Contra because they were a dangerous threat to U.S. imperial control of Latin America. And if it weren't for 2 or 3 people helping me down that path, I never would have made it. I was really happy that I got there. But after our walk, we had the famous clown Crescencio, and the juggler Paul, Becca's husband, entertained us, and we had sack races and hula hoop contest, and some very heartfelt speeches about how much life had changed for these people in that community having electricity. And the dam was finished in 1994 and now serves 1,700 families. And there's a little mini central Ben Linder. I think we have a picture of that has 2 turbines that we visited before we left. Anyway, it was a wonderful day. It was, like I say, very emotional for me, but was very nice to see all the children enjoying so much, and what a nice school they have there named Ben Linder. And the next day we left for El Qua to talk to Rebecca Leaf. And I don't think we have a picture of her, but she's a very soft-spoken engineer that was, actually, I think that was her in that picture of Ben's funeral, walking between Daniel and his wife, Rosario. She's a thin person. She's been there for 35 years now, since Ben died. She came from Managua and basically took over the program, because if she hadn't, it just wasn't very organized back then. But since then, this group in El Qua is about 30 men that work with her, and they all have different jobs working in the with the turbines or working with the lines, etc. And Rebecca has graduated from MIT in Boston years ago. And Ben's original dam was in another place. It wasn't this one. And it served people for a while, but then it was insufficient for the growing needs. So we went down this dirt road. Well, yeah, the one in Los Angeles is working, like I said, that we saw where he died. But then the next day, after we talked to Rebecca, we went to this place called El Bote. That was a dirt road that was very bumpy, about a half an hour or so, that they had built out to this other river called the El Bote River. That's part of the Bocay River. And this Asociación de Trabajadores de Desarrollo Rural are just incredible guys. Like I say, they're so dedicated. We listened to a talk by the engineer named Boanerges Rocha, explaining how you can't just go into a rural community like this. I know, because I was a farmer here rurally for over 12 years. You can't just go and start telling people what to do. You have to convince them that reforesting the watershed of this river is going to benefit them in the end, not to burn. Nicaraguan farmers have this thing in April. Usually they burn the field that they're going to use because it's so much easier to start planting then, but it's really bad for the environment. And so he was able to slowly convince these people to reforest with native trees and plantains and bananas the sides of the hill so that the river would not diminish, and will keep providing them with water, and and they can have more plants because they have this benefit. The project all this time has been funded by Ben Linder's family in Portland, Oregon, and their neighbors, Michael and Francie Royce, who founded Green Empowerment. And hopefully we'll get the address of Green Empowerment. You can help these two organizations if you would like. They're starting to build a new dam on another river called the Santa Teresa River. And this Green Empowerment site, if you can find it on the internet, is very interesting because they've sustained Ben's dream for 35 years. Basically, here's our little plant that is in the Los Angeles River. After we met with Rebecca Leaf, I told her how impacted I was by seeing the site where Ben was senselessly murdered, but that I'd begun to see that it was a seed. A seed, again, it's hard because I get choked up about this, but if it weren't for her and all those guys that have founded those two cooperatives, these people, there's now, like 8,000 families that are served by these two dams. And they've been so dedicated. That's a huge plant that has grown from the seed of Ben's death, Ben and Sergio and Pablo's death. And the other thing I think is that Ben's death was also a plant seeded in the US, refuting President Reagan's lies. When his parents spoke to the US Senate, it helped to stop the official funding of the Contras. And even then, the CIA, as you probably know, continued funding the Contra War with selling crack in underprivileged communities in the US. And that was all revealed by Gary Webb, a journalist for the San Jose Mercury in Dark Alliance. And so now you see there were two seeds that were planted and have kept growing because of all these other people. I'm going to make an attempt at singing this song that was written by John O'Connor back in 1987. And I'm just reading about half of it, but I think it's really a cool song. Where are you going, Benjamin Linder? Where did you go? All those long years ago, I went to build dams to bring light to the people. I went to build dams for the campesino. Where did you come from, Benjamin Linder? Where is the country from which you have come? It's a place much like this one, green mountains and valleys. Away far northward, it's called Oregon. Why did they kill you, Benjamin Linder? Why did they fill your long young body with holes? They killed me for power, for greed, and for money. They killed me for the love I have in my soul. Where are you now, Benjamin Linder? Where can I find you, Benjamin, please? I live in the dark eyes of the campesinos. I live in the hands that are working for peace. Peace. Sorry, I get all teared up. That's it.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you. Thank you all to Susan and Bear and Kathy for your contributions. I just want to conclude by saying that we hope that you will all consider joining a delegation to Nicaragua to see for yourselves what is happening here. The Casa Ben Linder and the Alliance for Global Justice are co-sponsoring a virtual delegation, a course on women in Nicaragua, which began yesterday, and it has an optional in-person delegation in August. It's not too late to join either the class or the delegation. Casa Ben Linder also has planned delegations focused on healthcare and faith communities in 2022. You can find more information at casabenjaminlinder.org, and I'm putting the link in the chat there. So thank you very much. Back to you, Barbara.
Thank you, Becca, and all of the presenters. That was really informative and also very moving. And Susan, thank you for your song as well. Before continuing to questions and answers, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of a few people that were pointed out to me, and we are so appreciative of their presence today. One is John Linder, the brother of Benjamin Linder. Another is Paul Dix, who, as part of Witness for Peace in the 1980s, was the photographer who took so many black and white photos in the war zones. And he wrote Surviving the Legacy, a photo book about war, and then updated those photos from the neoliberal era. And someone who is often with us, but we're always glad to see him, is Ambassador Francisco Campbell, who is the Nicaraguan ambassador to the United States. We had one comment from Melissa Young, who said that she is so glad to be here because she knew Ben Linder. So I'm asking whether there are other people in our midst who also knew him then, and if so, maybe you could just write yes in the chat. And if you'd like to add any memories, quick memories of him in the chat, that would be great as well. Okay, I have a quick follow-up of my own, and this is for Becca. You said that prophylactic treatment is given to persons who either have a symptom of COVID or they've been exposed to someone with a symptom, that it's just assumed that you ought to start the prophylactic treatment right away. What treatment is typically given to these persons?
Right. So when someone has any symptoms of COVID, in the public system, the medicine that they're given is called colchicine, which is a very cost-effective. It doesn't cost anything to the patient, but if you were to go to a pharmacy and purchase it yourself, both of the medicines I'll mention would cost under $3 here for the whole course of medicine. They're generics that are available. So colchicine is given to people who have symptoms and have suspected COVID. And then they're also given, as well as anyone who has been in contact with them, is given ivermectin. And I know everyone in the United States will start thinking that we're giving people horse medication here, but ivermectin is actually medication that is it is for humans as well. It's a different dosage, smaller pills. And that is, there's a lot of research been done on it internationally that actually show the effectiveness in suppressing symptoms of COVID, so that people can have if they do get COVID, when they've been exposed, it will help them have a lighter case and reduce hospitalization. So the research that has been done about this is not in the US. Those of you who are there will note. Instead, in the US, the options that are getting given is the Pfizer medication, which I think costs $700 for a course of treatment. So there may be some capitalist reasons that information is not being widely given in the US.
Thank you, Becca. And now we have a question from, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name right, but Ashrit Varidireddy. And that question is directed to all of the speakers. So you can, whoever would like to be part of the answer, that's great. The question is, what is your favorite part of the Light and Legacy Brigade?
I'll just say quickly, and then I think Kathy's going to speak. My favorite part was being in the communities of El Qua and Bokai, where Ben worked, and getting to see the projects that are still happening there today. That was pretty amazing to see the progress. Kathy?
My favorite part tended to happen every day of our week and a half together. And that was what we would do sort of on the side, like that trip to Viejo León, just suddenly discovering Nicaraguan Cultural Affairs Department and the academics in archaeology, anthropology, what they would do to excavate a large early colonial Spanish city that had been buried by volcanic eruptions, abandoned and buried. And it just blew your mind that something such high quality was sitting in the middle of this teeny tiny town. Now, fortunately, it's a small village and not a bustling city. You really get a feel for how gorgeous the countryside could be there, because this is a national park. And I suddenly said to my guide, I know why I love it here so much, because it's, otherwise they were building churches and doing Spanish things from the 1500s. And it's that there was no litter. And then right up until the last day of our delegation, when we were still high up in the mountains in Jinotega, the entire water cooperatives focus was on the preservation of nature in the land surrounding and largely above them, because there's towering mountains around them and cliffs. And so modestly, they had an anti-litter campaign, and they were sharing with all people in the region that we don't want to trash this, don't throw trash. And there were signs, and there were, basureros, there were garbage cans everywhere, and the Cordillera was clean. The whole region was clean. So in between that, every day we did something fun and cultural and fabulous, and aside from what you've seen, all those zoos were my favorites. Thanks.
Anybody else?
And I wonder, does everyone know that you can place a question in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen? And we have time for a few more questions.
I was just going to say, gosh, I mean, I was so glad to get to Qua and Bokai for sure. And El Qua, just in case of people that don't remember, is also the theme of a very important song from the revolution called Las Mujeres del Qua that you can look up. It was a very conflicted region, even back in the Somoza time. I think one of the many reasons I live in Nicaragua is because the people are so hospitable and loving and caring. I mean, like I said, I couldn't have made it that 300 yards down the, the site without three people practically, guiding me by hand because my back isn't so great. But that was another example. Just Nicaraguans are wonderful to live with.
I could answer the question that John Linder asks, what are the importaciones in the pie chart for sources of energy, fuels for energy generation? Importaciones are relatively new. Just a few years ago, Nicaragua couldn't bring any electricity in from either Honduras or Costa Rica. And now they are interconnected. And they are buying and sharing and trading and building grid out across the borders there. And so that portion of the pie chart is imported energy, and I did not run down the rabbit hole to know how it was generated. Much of it might be fossil fuels. I don't know if there's a nuclear plant anywhere in America Central. But some of it might be wind. I know if it's coming from Costa Rica, it's going right past our huge wind farms and on Lake Nicaragua. So that's all I know, John, but importaciones are coming in across the border. Additionally, there's an amazing ship in the port of Corinto that is a natural gas plant. I believe it's either Japanese or Chinese. And it's actually generating, and I assume sending energy through undersea cable across the bay and onto the grid. And that's an amazing looking thing. Look it up. That's what a ship that is. It's so nice to know that it's not full of oil. I like that part. Thank you. Also, does anyone know of whether or not the prosthetics factory is still in Managua?
Kathy, I'm asking some questions here, okay? So the next question that I was going to address was from Catherine DeWeese Parkinson about geothermal. She says that it's been controversial with local communities in Mexico, and she wondered whether that has been an issue in Nicaragua. She thought the concerns might be based on fears of safety and lack of consultation. Anybody know anything about that? Okay.
There's only 2 geothermal plants in Nicaragua. They're relatively small, not terribly impactful, and I have not heard about controversy, although I can well imagine. I know that we here on our indigenous lands in New Mexico, when they try to develop geothermal, it's that lack of consultation and fear of, what if we cause an explosion that comes up. So I understand that question, but I know that those plants are so powerful that only 2 plants are generating that percentage of energy.
And they've been around a long time.
Right.
Yeah, the only accidents they've had is when the volcanoes have gone off.
There is, yes. I was also going to say that the Momotombo plant is more what we can speak to, but they actually, they pull up from the ground the steam and the brine, and then actually the used brine, once it's gone through its process and cooled to the point where they can't use it to generate electricity anymore, it actually gets injected back into the earth. So there's not a waste. It doesn't go in and out of the lake. It doesn't, there is not and most of what they use is kind of reused over and over again. And then that brine is injected back into the earth. So there's not a lot of concern about that. It's not anywhere close to any population center. And it has been there since the early 80s. There's another plant that is functioning. And then there is one that's in process of, there's a couple different places that they're doing studies. So I guess we'll have to see what the community consultation process will be there. But my understanding is that it's a very long process to study how a particular geothermal plant can work.
At one time, they did put the brine into the lake, but they quit doing that a while back.
I see that a number of people have shared connections that they have either with Ben Linder in the past or with Rebecca Leaf at various times. And it's wonderful to see people's shared memories and connections. Thanks so much for putting those in the chat. At this point, we're coming to the end of our time. And so I'm wondering whether people have a final word. Maybe each of you would like to just offer a final word. We can go around. Becca, do you want to start?
On top of everything else, I'd just like to say we had a lot of fun together, and I'm very grateful for these three and for David, who was also with us for the time we had that week. Thanks, everyone.
It was only my second time in Nicaragua, but it won't be the last. Love it.
When you get your copy of our text and our slides a few days from now, my last slide, it shows the wing of my airplane as I left Central America and returned to New Mexico. And out the window, you'll see three big clouds. They look kind of nice clouds from an airplane. However, they are the smoke plumes of the fires that are devouring the center of our state, the entire chain of the Southern Rockies, between Taos and Santa Fe, between the Eastern Plains and the Rio Grande Valley. And we have a daughter who's evacuated from there and many friends who've lost their homes. And it's been burning since early April. That unspeakable disaster of over 300,000 acres with no control in sight, the extraordinary drought of the last 2 years that has resulted in this condition, you can see right out the window of my airplane. And this climate change, the fact that Nicaragua has created a secretariat for climate change and has an officer, a minister filling that position and an entire office building, working on it, is very, very laudable. And they are certainly the threat of a good example against the imperialist countries of the world, led by the United States. Thank you.
I just want to say, I love singing the national anthem of Nicaragua because it's about peace. And that's one of the main reasons I live here is it seems that everything's trying to make the world better for the majority of the population, which can't always say about that other country up north. That's why I live here. And that's, I just, every time I see something else, it makes me even more proud to live here.
Okay, any other last words? In that case, thank you all for attending. And as I responded to somebody, the recording and the related materials will be available within just a very few days. So anybody who registered for this will be receiving those. But thank you everyone for attending today. Bye for now.